Okay, we'll go ahead and get started here. It is 7 o'clock, 7:01, and we are here at First Thursday here for Cowlitz County Historical Museum. I'm Joseph Gavednik, your museum director, and it's great to see that we've got people participating live here and online, and thanks for braving the weather to come here. We had some pretty amazing thunderstorms last night and this morning, and bit of rain here and there, and it was dark out today, so I wasn't sure how many people would show up here, so I'm glad that we have a good audience here. I have a couple of announcements to make before we get into our program, which is the Lower Columbia Genealogical Society. First announcements are that the Give Big campaign is going on right now. We had a big event on the 2nd and 3rd for Give Big, which is the replacement for Give More 24. Give Big actually goes till the end of the month. So if you get onto our Cowlitz County Historical Society website, you'll see a link to Give Big. And if you haven't had an opportunity to participate in our fundraising drive for our new collection storage shelving project, please click on that and you'll learn a little bit more information. And for our live seated audience here, we have the trifolds that have information about our new project, which is doubling the space in our largest, one of our largest storage rooms, what we refer to as storage room number 10. So please consider to help us out with that if you have an opportunity to do so. And if you have already helped us out, thank you so very much for your investment in our future here. Another announcement here is our next temporary exhibit coming up is 1923, the year that changed Cowlitz County history. That exhibit is scheduled to go up on Friday, May 19th. It is currently at the printers right now, and we're just working on a couple little final editing components, and then it should print fairly soon, and we'll have the panels up. We've already been putting the display cases up and populating them with some of the objects that will be on display. Finally, our next First Thursday, which is the last First Thursday of our season, is on June 1st, and that will bring John Simpson here again. Many of you know who he is. He is the author of the Civil War Letters book, and he will be talking about the Civil War letters and its connection actually with the planned city of Longview for Longview's centennial. So we will wrap up the season with John Simpson and his preservation of Civil War letters and the planned city of Longview. So I've had the pleasure of knowing the president of the Lower Columbia Genealogical Society, Larry Turner, for several years now in our regional Heritage Association, the Heritage Association of the Lower Columbia. And he and a couple of his colleagues here with the Genealogical Society will be talking to us about some of the great work that they're doing, and hopefully be able to answer any of your questions about how to dive into genealogy, and I guess how addictive it could probably get too, because I think you get down all these interesting rabbit holes of looking up the history of people and what that trail of history leads to. The museum has archives here and cemetery records and all kinds of resources that are available if you are interested in researching genealogy. And of course, please reach out to the Lower Columbia Genealogical Society if you have questions. So I'd like to give a brief introduction. We have Larry Turner, who is the president of the Lower Columbia Genealogical Society, Alice Sanders, and Barbara Lockard. So we have three presenters here today. Larry was a toxicologist. Are you always a toxicologist for life, Larry?
About halfway through my career, I became a toxicologist.
About halfway through your career, you became a toxicologist. And he worked for the EPA's Endangered Species Protection Program and retired in 2004 and moved from Washington, D.C. to the other side to Washington State. And Larry caught the genealogy bug in the early 1980s and was fortunate to get started while close to the National Archives, the Library of Congress, and other important records repositories. Barbara Lockard has been a member of the Lower Columbia Genealogical Society since 1968. She served as president, trustee, book buyer, and is currently serving as program chairperson. She has traced one line of ancestry to the Mayflower, and she is also has another line that goes to Alfred the Great, and has done on-site research in all her ancestral towns across Europe, as well as having freelanced for Heritage Quest, which is a national genealogical periodical. And last but not least is Alice Sanders, who has a passion for genealogy, which started back in 1975, when a friend asked her to attend a genealogical meeting as a guest. She had a family secret she wanted to research, and later the friend found her answer, and I hope you share that answer with us if it's not too personal, because that would be interesting to find out what mysteries lie around there. She has, of course, found a hobby that she loves and developed a group of friends through this endeavor. Over the years, Alice has held each office of the society, except for one, which is that of the treasurer. At present, her position is publicity. Alice has compiled 2 books of local records and that are now at the Longview Library. So without further ado, I'm going to switch us to not Spring Share. We want Spring to share its season with us, but we're going to go to Screen Share, and Larry's going to come up and start us with our presentation here. So just give us a moment here while we transition.
Yeah, we want to get this.
There we go. I think you just click here and then this might be all right.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for coming, and I want to thank Joseph and the museum for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about our history and how we fit into this community and that sort of thing. The Lower Columbia Genealogical Society. Whoops, I went the wrong way. I went too far. How do I go back? I don't know how I go back. Okay, can we back up here? I don't know how to back up.
Back up, so we would use this one here.
It seems to have frozen on us because any program is not complete without a technical difficulty. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Sorry for the technical difficulties, guys. Okay. Sure. That should do it, forwards and backwards, maybe,
Okay.
as long as it doesn't get stuck.
All right. We
Sorry about that.
were already headed for the second slide, so I'll go there. And this is a slide that if you don't know your history, you don't know anything more than being part of a tree. But the thing is that history is the museum's bailiwick, but family history fits in there very well. So it's pretty much the same. I'm going to go over a few things. We'll talk about the history of the society. We'll talk about the things that are our projects that we have done over the years. I have to add in here, by the way, that I have only been a member of this society for about 10 years. These people have been around a lot longer than I have because they lived here before I did. And so they have all the history, and I'm just trying to catch up with everything else. Oops, that's the wrong way. What is genealogy? Genealogy is basically the study of dead ancestors. We like to do it in several ways. We might like to do it as a family tree, which is a chart of all the people in your past or alongside your past also, because it isn't just a straight line. There are family trees that are descendancy trees where everybody descendant from one person are done on a tree. This is a pedigree chart. Come on, don't do that. That was a long way. This is a pedigree chart where you just start on one side with an individual here. This is Amanda Richards' chart. She's right there, and then her parents, then her grandparents, and then great-grandparents, and so on. The next type is a descendancy one, and this is for her Mayflower descendants, where you have up here at the top is the people who were on the Mayflower, and then the descendants that come down here. Being a Mayflower descendant is a very important thing. I'm not. So I'm not important, I guess. But you can also make them look good and have a family tree that you can actually display somewhere. So that's what genealogy is in the terms of the trees, but on the other end, it's family history. And if you take an ancestor and you just figure out that, hey, he was here and did this, he was born, he was married, he died, but what did he do? That's the thing about family history. So I can find out, for example, that this ancestor of mine may have left town and went to Homestead, but by doing a little bit of history work, I found out that there was a financial panic at that time, and he and half the businesses in town went bankrupt. So he had to leave town to go homestead and have a living. So the family history puts the things into context that you're working on. We are a typical 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have a standard structure with trustees, bylaws, board, this sort of thing. There's nothing unusual here except that we're small. We have a membership right now that is at about 42, and over the years it has ranged between about 25 and about 75. Peak times actually were just after Roots was published and played on television. That created a big interest in genealogy, and so that increased the membership, but it didn't last. Actually, we're not getting very many new members, and some of our older members are getting older, which is a small problem for some of them if they get that old. So we are not keeping up our numbers that we would like to. We have goals, we have objectives. These are written into bylaws, and I'm not going to read them to you, but basically they come down to two different things: to acquire, share, and use genealogical information, and to provide education and instruction on how to do genealogy. The major objective for most of us is doing our own family history and trying to find out where we came from and where we might be headed. At least we hope we might find that out. The history is interesting. In 1958, Rose Janke, who is I think she's our oldest member, she's 96, she's still here. She was given some letters by her mother, and she was supposed to find out something about her siblings because there had been contact lost back in the days of only snail mail. and not very much in the way of phone calls. So she started looking at these letters and she started getting interested in what was going on. And so she went over to the library and started looking in the library in the history section. And she met another lady there named Mildred Richardson. And then she met another lady there named Izetta Clegg. We're not going to mention too many names, but these are the important names. And so they were meeting in her living room. They weren't a society. They were just meeting to compare notes. And then this fellow named John Gerhardt, for whom Gerhardt Gardens is named, I found out later, wrote a letter to the Daily News. And he said, would we like to start a genealogy society? And there's these three people who are sitting there in Rose's living room saying, yes, yes, let's do that. So in 1963, they held a meeting at the council chambers, and they formed the new Southwest Genealogical Group. And so that was actually formed in 1963. And it made page 1 of the Daily News. And that might not be a big deal now, but it was then. So we have met in many places, all of these places. Most recently, I've only known the Somerset retirement apartments and the virtual, all the rest were before my time. But we quickly got out of the Somerset apartments when the pandemic hit. They kicked us out actually, and we wanted to leave anyway. We didn't like pandemics. The Daily News gives us an opportunity to put a bunch of information out. This is how to do a family tree. And it's on page 17 of the Daily News. Can you find a page 17 of the Daily News now? No, but this went on for 8 different columns to do this. And so the Daily News was a key feature in giving us publicity and letting the community know about what we were doing. It also was a means for other kinds of communication too. So we wish we had a paper now that would go out and do more human interest stories. I mean, it's very good for local sports and for other things, but it isn't nearly as comprehensive as it used to be. We like to give genealogical assistance. This is one of the things that pleases us. We've had workshops. We've had this, what we call a Wednesday helper program, where we had somebody in the library every week that would be there and available, and it was publicized so that they could answer genealogical questions or aid in the development of a family tree or whatever. We also have had question and answer sessions that have just been sort of informal meetings about trying to see what we can do to help other people. We have queries that come in. These are mailed in from other parts of the country where somebody has a Cowlitz connection. They say, can you find me a birth certificate or an obituary, or do you know if this person was in a census? And so we respond to those kinds of queries also. We are going to restart our genealogy assistance. We are working on how that is going to come about post-pandemic, because things are markedly different than they used to be, and we will not be doing the Wednesday helper at the library anymore. This is another example of the kind of thing we try and assist on. This is John Gerhardt, and he was the first president. The formation of the society also had input from the Seattle Society of Genealogy, who sent somebody down to help us get organized. We have a newsletter. We started the newsletter in 1986. Oh, I meant to mention this earlier. Up in the corner, right up there, our motto is the key to the past. And so that is what we have as an identifying marker. At any rate, the key was named the key. It was just the newsletter before in 1994. It includes society news, tips, stories, contact information, and additional little things like, what is it? And since you're a historical society here, I will ask you, what is it? Does anybody know what that is? Okay, it's the kind of thing that you put warm, hot coals in, and it's a warming pan, so that when you go to bed cold at night, you can heat up things, put it in there, put it in your bed, and keep yourself warm a little bit. But we have those little things that make it sort of interesting at times. In addition, we had we had put our members' names and the people that they were researching into the Longview time capsule that was put out in around 2000, I think it was. We've had other conventions here. We've had the Washington State Genealogical Society meeting here. So it is not just simply us. We go elsewhere. Our folks have informally, and I'm not sure, maybe even formally before my time, had a lot of trips to places that had good information. If you know anything about genealogy, and if you don't, you'll find out, the Salt Lake City Church of the Latter-day Saints Library is the biggest genealogical library in the world. They have a faith-based requirement to do a little study on their ancestors. And so that it's part of their religion, and they have made this information available to everybody, but not necessarily where you are. So trips to Salt Lake City are very common for genealogists. Let's move on here. Right now, we are engaged. Some of us are engaged in what's called the pioneer pursuit. This is being led by the Washington State Genealogical Society. And what they're trying to do is document every resident that was here before statehood. There were about 350,000 of them at the time of statehood, and there are only about 5,000 who have pioneer certificates. So there's a lot of room for finding out more about some of our territorial citizens, and that's what they're trying to do, and we're working on it. This is the Pioneer's certificate volume, so you can check and see if you've got a pioneer that's already been done. So that's the kind of thing that we're doing, and I'm going to pass this on now to Alice, who is going to be dealing with the county records.
Okay, my section is going to be on records. Your ancestors produced what we call a paper trail. When they had an event in their life, the children were born, they got married, they bought property, they sued each other, and eventually they died. Each one of those events produced a piece of paper. And it's these pieces of paper is what you search for when you're trying to do a family history. And the beautiful part of it is most of these records are at your county level, just like here in Kelso. Okay. I need to change this over. Larry, I need your help. Back.
We're supposed to be going back. There we are.
Okay, there. Oh, hold it right there.
Okay, so you want to hit
Okay,
that button.
there. Okay, when I need a change, I'll call you again. In Kellis County, we're no different than any other county. There's many doors that open up into offices, 3 of them are emergency, like the 311, but only 4 of those offices has genealogical information. The first one that we're going to talk about is the Cowles County Museum. If your ancestor had something extraordinary that happened, you'll probably find some information here. The State Historical Society is here, and they're very willing to help you find something on your ancestors if they have it. And what's the next one? Okay, the next one is the Hall of Justice, which is the new courthouse. I still think the one on the hill in Kelso is the courthouse, but that's my problem. There are 2 courts in this particular. The first one is the Superior Court that does trials of both civil and criminal. The clerk of the court is very, very good about, if you very nicely ask, about sharing her information or his information, whoever's a clerk. The other court is a lesser court, not so much information. If your ancestor was caught speeding, he might have appeared in the lesser court. Here again, the clerk of the court is the one that you want to talk to. Now, this is the one that I think is the courthouse, but then I'm old, and so that doesn't matter. Now it's called the Hall of Records. And this is where your treasure trove of genealogical information. The auditor's office has land records. They have the grantee, grantor, grantee meaning the buyer and the seller. So each land record is recorded twice, being sold and being bought. And it's under the auditor's office. They have all kinds of records. They have liens. They also record items. If you have a contract, they can record that for you. They record information from the county. This is, by all means, you want to know your auditor's location and name, and take all kinds of pencils and papers with you, and they will copy for you. They do not charge you the regular charge. Tell them it's for genealogy, and they give you a rate. They also have marriage records. They have death records. All of your vital statistics is through this auditor's office. And the last one that we have for records is the county commissioners. The Cowles County is divided into 3 sections. Each section will elect a county commissioner. And this county commissioners' records go back to 1854. The first one that they had, their minutes of their meeting, there was 1 land record and 1 marriage record for the minutes. These records from 1854 up into present time are online, and they named lots of people. If an elderly lady was perhaps she was short of groceries, or maybe she needed help on her rent, this is recorded in their minutes because they helped her. They almost had a welfare system, and it was sort of everybody helping each other. If some fellow was out of the community and he wanted a road, he would come and petition the commissioners to have a road put by his place. Like I said, these commissioners named a ton of people. It would also help with what Larry said about the Pioneer Certificate that would prove the existence of somebody if they check and find their ancestors there. The county commissioners meet at the, actually what I call the courthouse annex. It's called the Administration Building now, and it's behind the old courthouse. And that's just about it for the records. So we'll have Barbara come up for next. Barbara? Oh, is there any questions?
The next slide, the books.
I'm sorry?
These also.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's not mine. Okay.
Okay.
Excuse me.
All right, well, this is just this. Scarlett Hagel spent years, 5 years, looking at all of those records with typewriter and magnifying glass. She has something like a dozen books that she's, how many? 18 books that she has published of Cowlitz County records. These are the kinds of things that cause people to come to Cowlitz County to find out about their ancestors and what was going on. These are very interesting books. Some of them are a little bit weird. They cover the state book of levies. That's only for 3 years, and that's a book. Now, I didn't look at this book, and I should have looked at it more, because this bottom one, we have fish certificates. Now, actually, these are tantamount to fishing licenses, but just the idea that we have records on fish certificates fascinated me. We have naturalization information. We have the court calendar and marriage records, probate records, and we also did Wahkiakum County too, so I didn't want that to get passed. Okay, now it is time for library collection, and that is.
Hi,
Carol, there.
right there, okay. When I joined the society in 1968, we were meeting at the Parks and Recreation Building in Longview. The venue was great, but there was no place to house the books we owned. So we had to transport those books in our cars every month from meeting to meeting. Parks and Rec finally gave us a little cupboard to house these books, so we didn't have to transport them any longer. Our collection outgrew that cupboard, so we realized we needed some place to house a genealogy collection. So in 1980, we made an agreement with the Longview Public Library to establish a genealogy collection there. They gave us the small room in the front of the library for our genealogy materials. We ultimately outgrew that area, and our collection was moved to the reference room in the library. That collection is now being moved to the mezzanine. It's still in the process of being moved, but I'd like to welcome all of you to run by the Longview Public Library, take a look and see what we have. We have books for every state in the union. We have books for most of the European countries. I think you'd be very surprised actually at what's housed there, because between 2010 and 2019, the society purchased $17,000 worth of books to be housed at the library. That includes $4,100 of grant money from the library itself, as well as the Washington State Genealogical Society. Each book that we have given to the library has a book plate in the front of it stating that it was a gift from the Lower Columbia Genealogical Society. We also purchase memorial books for any of our members or their immediate family members who might have passed away. And those books also have book plates in the front of the book with the name of the deceased person. In fact, you might be surprised to find somebody that is related to you or that you know who has a memorial book in our collection. So we have established that goal by increasing the genealogical collection in the Longview Public Library. I guess I should have been fast forwarding this as I was talking, right? We currently have 3,572 books in the genealogy collection at the Longview Public Library. And now we're back to Larry.
Cemeteries are interesting places. They provide a lot of information. I don't know if you can read this, but I think it's probably worth saying something about. This isn't working. It must be out. Here lies Lester Moore. 4 slugs from a 44. No less, no more. That's in Boot Hill in Tombstone, Arizona, but I just happen to like that because it tells you a lot about Les. Surprisingly, a lot more than you would think would fit on a gravestone when you start reading what is in there as well as what is on there. But cemeteries were a project that Lower Columbia took on back in 1982. They wanted to get all the persons who were buried within Cowlitz County and get them recorded. And so there were 39 cemeteries that were found and recorded. Many of those are small cemeteries. As a matter of fact, 9 of them, I believe, have less than a dozen known people. You have to understand that a lot of these family cemeteries, the small ones, may or may not have had stones or other information about them. And when they got too much to maintain for whoever might have started them, oftentimes they were then fed into a cemetery district. And we have 7 of the cemetery districts that account for 19 different cemeteries. And the largest cemeteries are obviously Longview Memorial Park and Cowlitz View Memorial Gardens. That's, I think, 14,000 and 8,000. I'm not sure about the actual numbers. The process was tedious, you might say. They got out there, they walked the cemeteries, they recorded everything they could find on the stones. Then when they couldn't find any more, they would go to the records about those because the larger cemeteries and some of the small ones had records of when people were buried and that sort of thing. They checked obituaries. They contacted descendants to get more information. You know, you might see a stone up there that says Joe Smith and it doesn't say anything more. So they would contact Joe Smith's descendants and see what they could add to that in terms of names and dates. I have a cemetery stone for one of my ancestors that simply says MC, and that was his initials. And it was different than WC, which was in a different part of the cemetery. They weren't well-off people. They handmade their stones. The library provided support because in those days, this was computer. We are spoiled these days because we have computers and we can access things all over, but not all of the genealogy material that you want to look at is online. So it is important to have these kinds of things, and the library was very helpful in letting us use their computer. So we ended up with cemetery records. I missed one there. Yes. Some of these places were daunting, you might say, to go through. The stones did not have very good things, very legible stuff, and they were sometimes in pretty bad shape. Included in some of these cemeteries, we also helped to restore them, clean them up, and get them to be decent looking. you know, when they first came here, when Lewis and Clark came down here and came down the river, that they found what they called Mount Coffin. And it was a ghastly sight, they said. Mount Coffin was a basalt butte right below where the port is. And the Native Americans buried their dead above ground. And if they were important, they might have been on a scaffold or in a canoe or something else above ground. And there they just stayed until there was nothing left. Unfortunately, that, or maybe fortunately, I'm not sure, the basalt butte was taken down for gravel to help build the port. But thereafter, as soon as the Hudson Bay people came in, the Native Americans started burying their dead, and the first ones were buried without any information in a corner of Catlin Cemetery. Then later on, they started to get stones and information on them too. Recently, things have gone online. And so if you're looking for a cemetery record now, you might go online. You may recognize this guy. I think he was important here. I think he had a high school named after him, a few other things. So this is all online, and you can have a little biography on this Find a Grave source. There's another source called Billion Graves that does the same sort of thing. And they take a picture of the stone, which is really important because some of these, you know how online people can be. Some of them just want to put stuff up there, but they don't have all the documentation. So if you find one of these Find a Grave things and there's no stone, you have to be careful because it may or may not be accurate. This may or may not be accurate. What is accurate is the photograph. What is probably accurate is this birth, death, date, and burial. But this stuff down here is not necessarily accurate. And they even go further and they will put down, if they know them, the parents, siblings, children, spouse. And this makes it really nice to try and do genealogy because right there, you not only have Mark Morris, you have his parents, you have his siblings, you have his child, you have his spouse. Hopefully they're all there. In this case, I believe they are. I think he only had one child. Oftentimes, you will find two parents that had 11 children, but only one child is listed on Find a Grave. So you have to be careful on doing this, but it's a very useful tool. And we are pleased to have all these volunteers all over the world doing this so that we can get them online. That is now turn for Barbara.
Okay, this is my favorite subject, probably because I'm the program chair. But at any rate, this is why we have programs to meet this particular objective. So there's 4 statements up here. Let's look at the first one. My ancestors immigrated through Ellis Island in 1883. I'm sure somebody in your family's told you, great-great-grandpa immigrated through Ellis Island. Okay, he might have, but he didn't in 1883. That is blatantly false because Ellis Island did not open as an immigration processing center until 1892. If your ancestor immigrated through the Port of New York, he was most likely processed through Castle Garden. And if any of you have ever been to New York City and went to see the Statue of Liberty, you bought your tickets at Castle Garden. So you've been there. The second one, my family's name was changed at Ellis Island. This is a myth. And unfortunately, it's a myth that is being perpetuated forever and ever. Nobody's name was ever changed at Ellis Island. There were 2 reasons for that. One, the ship's manifest was generated in the country of origin. I think in the country of origin, they knew what your ancestor's name was. Secondly, there were interpreters at Ellis Island who spoke every language of our immigrants that passed through Ellis Island. Yes, your ancestors may have changed their names, but they changed them by choice. And the number one reason for changing the name was to become more Americanized. For example, if you have an ancestor from Germany whose surname was Schwarz, that translates in English to black. So he may have chosen the surname Black. I have a Czech ancestor whose name was Skowarek, if you can pronounce that, who met a man by the name of Turner. He thought that sounded far more Americanized, so all of his life, his surname was Turner. My immigrant ancestor arrived on the Mayflower. It's possible, but not likely. If every single person that I have ever met who claimed to have an ancestor on the Mayflower, that ship would have been a heck of a lot bigger than it really was. That ship only carried 102 passengers. And finally, my ancestor was an Indian princess. There is no such person. It's an inaccurate representation of a Native American. It's a poor translation for a daughter of the chief. We're not sure from where this phrase came, but it most likely came from the American colonists who, for some reason, believed that Native Americans were royal. At any rate, many people insist they have Native American ancestry. When I ask them why, great grandma looked like an Indian. Of course we do. No. You can only claim Native American heritage by knowing the tribe from which your ancestor descended and checking the Indian rolls. So because we have these myths, these falsehoods, we have a program committee. Oops, I went too far, sorry. We have a program committee. I chair that committee. I have 4 wonderful people who work with me, and we plan a program slate for every year designed to educate our members to not believe things such as these myths or falsehoods, to help them enhance their own genealogy, to offer them new resources to pursue their genealogy. And we try to plan our programs in such a way that we can speak to the novice genealogist as well as the seasoned genealogist. And we have speakers who are members themselves. We have speakers who are nationally known, and we even have international speakers. So we also try to do one program per year that we call a Q&A, whereby there is no program. It's just a matter of our members coming and saying such things as, hey, I need help. I have a brick wall. Is there anybody out there that can help me? So in case anybody is interested in attending one of those meetings, which at the moment are being held by Zoom, I am going to pass out the program slate for this year so that if one of those topics tweaks your interest, you might join us. Oh, you want me to finish this or you? So we currently meet the second Thursday. Thanks. Of every month except July and December. And if you're interested in joining us via Zoom, there is the link. And I have that on the handout that Joseph's passing out. Our website is listed on that handout also. Our membership dues are $15 a year or $22.50 for a family and $5 for students. We'd love to get more students. All of these things that you know about your family and your kids know about their grandparents are one day going to get lost unless we start recording those kinds of things. So I thank you for your attention, and I hope maybe some of you have gotten a little bit of a genealogy bug.
That's about it, except that if you want, I have printed out some of these so that you could take them so that you can get the address or the website. And are there any questions? Yes.
We actually had a question online. Question online asked, did the courts have information on the military? And particularly the DD 214 form, which proves military service issued to those leaving the military. So do the courts have any information on the military?
I don't know that there are any military records. The DD 214s are usually issued, if it's after you were in the service, through the St. Louis military archives. They're very easy to get as long as you provide information that says you are who you are and you have a reason for wanting it. It's extremely important document for veterans.
Question from the audience.
Yes,
Do you promote the idea of writing a family history as opposed to a genealogy?
I do. Other people don't. It runs a spectrum. My whole goal on genealogy is to write family stories. I found out that my ancestor was a marshal in upstate New York, and he captured this bad guy, and I saw, hey, that's interesting. And then I found out that this was all part of the Patriot War. You're historians or history interested. You know the Patriot War? Patriot War was 1837 to 1839, and it was when a bunch of Canadians decided that they wanted to secede from Canada, and they tried doing it was French versus English, and the English side tried to get the Americans to join. There was a whole cadre of thousands of Americans who were involved in the Patriot War. They actually invaded Canada. They got their tails whipped. But as a matter of fact, a bunch of them found themselves in Australia, which wasn't a good place in those days because that was where they sent the criminals. Some of them actually even came back. One of them came back and wrote his own history. So I like the history kinds of things. I like to know what they were doing, why they were doing it, where they were going. You know, all of these, like the person I said before, he went bankrupt and had to leave town. Actually, that was the second time he went bankrupt and had to leave town, because he went bankrupt in New York before he went to Wisconsin. So, and you know, as a bankrupt person, he was in the state Senate. He was in the House of Representatives. He tried in 1850s to give women the vote. Now, if all I had was his name and date, I wouldn't know that kind of information about him. I like the stories. Some people just want the names and the relationships, but most of us like stories.
Another thing some of us genealogists promote is, you know, this sounds a little morbid, writing your own obituary. Stop and think. Do your kids know what you were doing when you were 20, when you were 35? So many of us have had our obituaries written for years.
My daughter gave me homework last year for a Christmas present. There's a thing called Storyworthy, and they sent me a question once a week, and I had to answer that question. And right now they're in the process of making a book. And those questions ask about the past. What were your biggest expense? You know, when you were a kid, where did you live, and kind of all that kind of stuff. So in those questions, when I answered them, I listed out every location I lived at.
Yeah, I think that's great.
And stuff.
There's
And now they're making a book. I'll get it in another month or two. But that was
one thing
like
that
$100.
genealogists will run into periodically is if there's something that's maybe again the law or again morals or less than perfect type people, how are you going to deal with that in your records? Be very, very careful.
Don't publish it until you die.
Well, I am with my father-in-law. there was an immaculate conception.
Oh.
And, I kind of wondered how, and so I just, put the dates down, and if somebody else wanted to go with their fingers, then that was their problem. So, but it was not advertised, per se. Yes,
You have a favorite software that you can organize all that stuff?
good question.
There are many.
There are
There's
many.
lots of them. I didn't-
And, I tell you, a number of them have a free version. Try it and see if you like it. I happen to have Legacy, and I've got it because I've had it for so many years. But it's, I also have Family Tree way back when, and I like it too. So, mainly get one that is easy to put your information in. That it's user friendly for you. Because this is where you record all your stuff. All of your records goes on this, and there's a place for notes, and be sure to write notes. There's one instance in my particular family where this lady said, my grandmother told me. Well, what she told her was in his phone. And it's a bunch of hooey because I can't find any proof of it. That my great grandfather was supposed to have been raised by another family and took their name, and he wasn't really a Miller, he was something else. Not true.
All of these programs have, or at least all that I know of, have a free version. So you can try it out. If you like it, you can keep it. If you can pay for an upgrade, but you don't need to pay for an upgrade for the basics. So you can do that. But there is another little thing that I didn't want to get into, but I will now. I'm not on camera. I need to be on camera. There is what's called a GEDCOM. And what it does is it takes your family tree from almost any kind of a program that you might be working on, and it compresses it down to a certain set of things that can be transferred to another program or sent to somebody who can put it online or do something. So there is a way to get between these different programs if you find you don't like the one you had. And I have done GEDCOMs, but I've only switched once on my program. I got started once very early, and shortly afterwards, I found out that they were telling you needed to buy a new version every year. And I said, no, I don't. So now I have one that I only bought once, and it works a lot better that way, at least financially. So that answers your question. I use Legacy. I use Family Tree Maker.
We have to be on camera all the time.
You have to be on camera.
If you wanted to start dabbling in genealogy and you're not sure what you're doing, you can go onto a site called familysearch.org. That is run by the Mormon Church. And it's 100% free. You have to register, but you can do a lot of things on that site. And you could also start building a family tree on that site for free.
Ancestry allows you to build a tree on their site too. So I think most of the
But that's subscription.
that's a subscription.
And it's a spendy subscription if you don't know what you're doing.
I've gotten all my parents' old pictures and stuff and trying to get through the out the most allowing you to add pictures.
If you want to give me your email, I will send you a screenshot of a very small portion of my ancestry.com tree. So you can see what it looks like, because it has all the facts about that particular person as well as the photograph. But as far as software, they all pretty much do the same thing. It's just some of us have a different preference than others.
I started with the first one I found.
There any other questions?
There's no more questions online. That was just some conversation back and forth.
Okay,
So, well, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. And again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to the Lower Columbia Genealogical Society, whose information is up here. And we will see you next month at the first Thursday on June 1st. And that will be John Simpson and his Civil War letters connection to Longview and recognizing the centennial of Longview. And there's a lot of centennial stuff going on in other areas of our local history. Come by and see our 1923 exhibit that's going to open in a couple weeks because you're going to realize that it's not just Longview that's having a centennial, but Riderwood is having a centennial. The change of the county seat is having a centennial, completion of the Pacific Highway, and a few other things. So just come on down here to the museum and contact the Genealogical Society if you'd like to learn more about what they do. Very fascinating information.